All right? Now that we have the idea of rights, rights are inherent. They are a part of you, and you don't have to ask. I want to go through the Bill of Rights. Who can tell me what the first... Anybody here be able to recite the First Amendment for me? Another group of good patriotic Americans. Okay? I expect all of you to memorize the Bill of Rights. I really, really do. Go home, open it up, memorize the Bill of Rights so that you can say it word for word. That will help you in times of stress. When the police officer says, well, we're going to, take your car and impound it. I go, well, no, you're not either. Fifth Amendment says you cannot deprive me of life, liberty, or property without due process of law. And unless you are the judge, jury, and executioner, this little roadside chat doesn't constitute due process of law. Now, does it? It really helps. So, First Amendment. Congress shall make no law. Oh, that they had just put a period and were done. Congress shall make no law respecting the establishment of religion. What was the religion in England?
Anglican
Church. Church of England. What were the others? There were no others. You were either a member of the Church of England or you were a heretic. You believe in the Church of England, don't you? Get the rope. Does that sound like freedom of religion? Freedom of expression? No. In fact, William Penn was a Quaker. He was actually accused of heresy because you're a Quaker. Yeah, I'm Quaker. Okay, guilty, just confessed. And the jury refused to convict him. In fact, the judge put the jury in jail. No food and no water and no facilities for 7 days. And the jury still refused to convict William Penn. And that is basically the essence of our jury system. The purpose of the first part of that clause is to prevent the official religion of the United States. Now, if I put a copy of the Ten Commandments in a justice building, does that establish an official religion? Does that prevent you from being another religion?
No.
No. So technically, putting the Ten Commandments in a judicial building does not violate the First Amendment. But it does open you up for an interesting dilemma. Because if we're going to have freedom of religion, and a Jewish person wants to come in and put some symbolic symbol there, maybe the Torah or something, how would you be able to reject that? And you've got the Muslims that want to bring in the Quran, and you've got all these different, sects. They want to do this, they want to do that. You're going to have to build another wing on the building just for all the religious symbols. And if there are any atheists that have any brains, they'll go, our part of the building is all that part that doesn't have religious symbols, so we win. So, the purpose of the First Amendment is to prevent an establishment of a given religion. This is the only correct one. Nor prohibiting the free exercise thereof. All rights are individual rights. That's the only kind there are. There's no such thing as community rights. We all start out as individuals and we come together as a community. Do you have more rights or less rights because you're sitting here in a room full of people? The same amount of rights. We don't start with a great big ball of community and then shave off little slivers of individual. The only kind of rights that exist are individual rights. Religion is an individual right. So you have a right to pray anywhere you want. Now, if you have a school, now you've kind of crossed the lines. You've blurred that individual thing. But we've got government in school and God in school, and we're getting ready to throw God out of the schools? Why would you do that? Let's throw the government out of the schools because they're not supposed to be there anyway. Let's have all private schools. You have a Catholic school, a Protestant school, a Jewish school, a Muslim school, an atheist school, whatever. And you set the rules for your school. You want to pray in your school? Go ahead, it's your school. Throw the government out. We have a right to free speech. And we say that so casually. Why? Why do we have and need the right to free speech? So we can cheer for those Cowboys? Hey, you see that football game the other day? That's part of it. It was really a rhetorical question. We don't have freedom of religion so that we can discuss, well, it is so we can discuss literature, but primarily it is so that we can badmouth the government. We have a right to alter or abolish the government. If I wanted to alter the government, now I know that's a really strange hypothetical, because we all know the government is perfect, just the way it is. But hypothetically, if I wanted to change it, let me assume hypothetically that I thought taxes were too high. That giving, my federal, state, and FICA taxes total 48%, and I'm just not crazy about giving half of what I make to the government. How would I go about changing it? What would be the first step? How about getting behind a podium and going, ladies and gentlemen, I think taxes are too high. Are you with me? We need to get consensus so that we, the people, can go in and make changes to the government. Freedom of speech is primarily freedom of political speech. And when George Bush says, you're either with us or you're against us, the Alien and Sedition Act prevented people from saying anything bad about the government. If you go to a Republican rally with an anti-George Bush t-shirt, you get handcuffed and escorted out by the Secret Service. What was the defining characteristic of Stalinism? Suppressing political dissent. You're either with us or you're against us. This is chilling. When I was running for president, I went to a university and they had me speaking in this auditorium. It's a beautiful auditorium. 300, 350 seats. It looked like it had just recently been built. Beautiful facility. And I had 12 people in the first row. I thought, well, this is really silly. I got this, I'm echoing throughout the auditorium. I said, let's go across the hall. We've got a classroom. We can sit closer. We can see each other, face to face. Talk a little bit more informally. Nope, can't do that. You're a political candidate, presidential candidate. You have to be in the auditorium because the auditorium is a free speech zone. I almost fell off the stage. I said, what about the hallway? What about the rest of the campus? No, that's a speech-free zone. And I will tell you exactly what I told those students. Anywhere I happen to be standing is a free speech zone. The government doesn't tell me what I can or cannot say. The government doesn't tell me where I can or cannot say it. I have freedom of speech because none of you are big enough to shut me up. That's why I have freedom of speech. And when we hear someone who's being sexist or racist or homophobic standing on a soapbox, we go, oh my gosh, person is sexist, they're racist, they're homophobic. We got to get the government to drag them down off their soapbox. Wrong. If you violate or allow the government to violate somebody else's freedom of speech, what does that mean about your speech? You got to get a permit.
Privilege.
It's a privilege. And after I heard that, free speech zone was kind of that phrase, I was listening, I heard something on TV and I turned, and at the Democratic Convention in Boston that year, they had a free speech zone. 2 miles away from the convention. It was a chain link fence surrounded by razor wire. Does that sound like a free speech zone to you? Oh, look, Mom, Auschwitz, another free speech zone. And they wanted me to go to the Republican convention. They had a rally out in Central Park. I said, okay. And they're going to have a bunch of people there. Okay, yeah, I kind of figured that. Well, we don't know if you want to go or not. Why? Well, because the Libertarian Party in New York City didn't get a permit. I went, so? So well, we thought you might be worried about getting arrested. I'm willing to lay down my life, liberty or death, and you think I'm worried about a silly permit? Wake up! Freedom of speech, freedom of the press. Do we have freedom of the press? Freedom of the media in this country? With every, ABC, NBC, I mean, they're like rubber stamped. They look like little robotic dolls telling you exactly the same story. If the only place you get your news is from television, you are living under a rock. We have a right to peaceably assemble. You don't need permits. And you also, and this is important, have a right to petition the government for a redress of grievances. What does that mean in 2007? It means that you can file a lawsuit against the government. Philosophically, does the government have a right to violate your rights? No, it's a non sequitur. So, if they do, hypothetically, the government accidentally steps on your political toes, then what? Well, then you can file a lawsuit against the government and presumably win. Of course, in our court systems today, the government claims to have sovereign immunity. You can't file a lawsuit against us because we're sovereign. No, we are sovereign. You have privileges. And I ought to throw you in jail just for asserting the idea that you had sovereign immunity. This is Illinois. Has anybody here heard of the Second Amendment? Or have they just like completely deleted that? There's I'm genuinely pleased, they've created a First Amendment museum over at the Tribune building in Chicago. Tribune, freedom of the press, First Amendment. I could not wait. I still haven't been there. I want to go to the First Amendment Museum and go, this is wonderful. I was a presidential candidate. I wrote a book all about... You know what we ought to do? We ought to take the next floor down and turn it into the Second Amendment Museum. You know how many people would have heart attacks in Illinois? This is incredible.